Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face as he climbed down the rocky canyon wall. The sun was setting on Kepler 442b, painting the red rocks in deeper shades of orange and purple. He had been working on this mining planet for 3 years now, and the harsh landscape still amazed him every day. His job was simple but important. He checked the rock formations to see where the mining teams should dig next. The rare minerals they found here powered spaceships across the galaxy. It was dangerous work, but Jake loved being outdoors instead of stuck inside the mining station all day. Something glinted in the fading light below him. Jake stopped and looked closer. It was not the usual sparkle of metal in the rocks. This was different. Softer somehow. He climbed down faster, his boots sliding on the loose stones. At the bottom of the canyon behind a pile of fallen rocks, Jake found something that made him freeze. A small creature lay curled up against the stone wall. It was no bigger than a human baby, but it was clearly not human. Its skin was covered in scales that changed color as it breathed. The scales shifted from deep blue to silver to pale green. The creature was very still. Too still. Jake knelt down beside it and saw that its breathing was shallow and fast. Its eyes were closed, but he could see they were large and the color of amber honey. Small wing-like flaps extended from its back, torn and dirty. Jake looked around the empty canyon. He should call this into the station right away. There were strict rules about finding new life forms. The science team would want to study it. The military would want to know if it was dangerous. But as he looked at the small, hurt creature, all he could think about was helping it. The creature made a soft sound, like a bird chirping in pain. Its scales flickered weakly from blue to gray. Jake had trained as a medic before becoming a mining engineer. Every instinct told him this little being was dying. He pulled off his thermal blanket and carefully wrapped it around the creature. It was so light he could barely feel its weight in his arms. As soon as the warm blanket touched its skin, the creature's scales brightened slightly. Its breathing seemed to get a little easier. Jake made his decision. He would take it back to his quarters and try to help it. He could report it later after he made sure it would survive. The walk back to Mining Station 7 took 20 minutes. Jake held the creature close to his chest, feeling its tiny heartbeat through the blanket. Several times he thought it had stopped breathing, but then it would take another small breath and keep fighting. His quarters were small but private. As the night shift supervisor, Jake had his own room away from the main dormitories. He cleared off his desk and made a soft bed using towels and spare blankets. The creature did not wake up when he placed it down, but its scales continued their slow color changes. Jake gathered everything he could find that might help. He had a basic medical kit, some nutrient supplements, and a small heater he used for brewing coffee. He set up the heater nearby to keep the creature warm, and used a dropper to put tiny amounts of water near its mouth. At first, the creature did not respond. But after an hour of patient work, it opened its eyes. Jake caught his breath. The amber eyes were beautiful and clearly intelligent. They looked right at him with what seemed like understanding. The creature tried to lift its head but was too weak. Jake spoke softly to it. "Hey there, little one. You are safe now. I am going to take care of you." The creature's scales shifted to a warm golden color when he spoke. Jake was amazed. It seemed to understand that his voice meant comfort and safety. Over the next few hours, Jake managed to get small amounts of water and liquid nutrients into the creature. He watched its breathing get stronger and saw more color returning to its scales. When it finally fell into what looked like peaceful sleep instead of unconsciousness, Jake felt a wave of relief. He sat back in his chair and really looked at what he had found. The creature was unlike anything in the planetary database. Its scales were more complex than any reptile he knew about. The wing membranes were delicate, but showed signs of being built for actual flight. Most striking were its hands. They had long, graceful fingers that looked almost human. Jake checked his work schedule. He had 2 days off before his next shift. That would give him time to help the creature get stronger before he had to decide what to do next. As he watched the small being sleep, Jake felt a strange connection forming. Maybe it was just because he had saved its life, but something about this creature seemed special. The way it had looked at him suggested a deep intelligence. The way its scales changed color seemed like more than just a physical response. It felt like communication. Jake set his alarm for every 2 hours so he could check on his patient through the night. Before he went to sleep, he looked once more at the creature curled up in its makeshift bed. "What are you?" he whispered. "And what are you doing all alone out here?" The creature's scales flickered once in its sleep, shifting to a soft purple that somehow reminded Jake of contentment. Whatever this little being was, it was no ordinary animal. Jake fell asleep wondering if he had just made the most important discovery in human history, or simply found a new friend. 3 weeks had passed since Jake found the small creature in the canyon. He had started calling her Nova because of the way her scales sparkled like starlight when she was happy. She was getting stronger every day, and Jake was amazed at how quickly she learned. At first, Nova could barely lift her head. Now she could sit up, move around his quarters, and even glide short distances using her wing membranes. She was about the size of a house cat, but she moved with a grace that reminded Jake of a dancer. The most surprising thing was how smart Nova was. She seemed to understand everything Jake said to her. When he pointed at objects, she would look at them and make soft musical sounds. Her scales would change colors in patterns that Jake was starting to recognize as different emotions or responses. Golden yellow meant she was happy. Deep blue meant she was thinking hard about something. Purple seemed to be her way of showing affection. Red meant she was scared or upset, which thankfully happened less and less often. Jake had created a whole life support system for Nova using equipment he slowly borrowed from different parts of the mining station. He told his supervisor, Lisa Campbell, that he was working on a personal project to improve his quarters. She did not ask too many questions since Jake always did good work. The hardest part was keeping Nova secret during his work shifts. She seemed to understand that she needed to stay hidden, but Jake could tell she got lonely. When he came back to his quarters, she would greet him with excited chirping sounds and scales that flashed through rainbow patterns. Nova was also incredibly curious about human technology. Jake often found her examining his computer, his medical equipment, or even his coffee maker. She never broke anything, but she seemed to study how things worked. Sometimes Jake would come back to find that something was working better than before. His computer ran faster. His air recycler was quieter. His lights were brighter but used less power. At first, Jake thought it was just coincidence, but one evening, he watched Nova touch a broken data pad with her long fingers. Her scales shifted to a focused blue color, and suddenly the data pad started working again. She had somehow fixed it just by touching it. The strangest thing was the dreams. Almost every night since finding Nova, Jake had vivid dreams of places he had never seen. He dreamed of crystal cities that reached toward purple skies. He saw creatures like Nova flying in huge groups over landscapes covered in silver forests. The dreams felt real, like memories of a life he had never lived. In the dreams, he flew alongside the winged beings through air that tasted like cinnamon and electricity. He saw vast libraries filled with knowledge from 1,000 worlds. He witnessed ceremonies where beings like Nova sang in harmonies that made the very air shimmer with color. Jake always woke up from these dreams feeling peaceful but confused. He was a practical man who did not usually remember his dreams at all. These felt different, too real to be just his imagination. One evening, as Jake was eating dinner, Nova climbed onto his desk and looked directly into his eyes. Her scales shifted to a pattern Jake had never seen before, silver spirals mixed with deep gold. Suddenly, he could feel something in his mind, not words exactly, but feelings and images. He saw himself from Nova's perspective, a giant, gentle creature who had saved her life when she was dying. He felt her gratitude, her affection, and something else, respect. She saw him as more than just a rescuer. She saw him as an equal despite their obvious differences. The connection lasted only a few seconds, but it left Jake shaken. Nova was not just intelligent. She was telepathic. The dreams were not his imagination. They were her memories, somehow shared with him while they both slept. Jake sat back in his chair looking at Nova with new eyes. "You are not from this planet, are you?" he asked softly. Nova's scales shimmered in what Jake now recognized as agreement. She made a series of musical sounds that almost sounded like words. Jake had the strong feeling that she was trying to tell him something important, but she did not know how to say it in a way he would understand. Over the next few days, their bond grew stronger. Nova began spending more time sitting near Jake while he worked or read. She seemed to enjoy human music, especially classical pieces with complex harmonies. Her scales would pulse in rhythm with the music, creating her own light show. Jake also noticed that Nova was growing, not just getting healthier, but actually getting bigger. She was now the size of a small dog, and her wing membranes were larger and stronger. Sometimes he caught her looking toward the window with what seemed like longing. The situation became more complicated when Dr. Ben Torres, the station's chief medical officer, started asking questions about Jake's medical supply usage. Jake had been carefully taking small amounts of different medicines and nutrients to help Nova. But Dr. Torres had sharp eyes for inventory. "Jake, I notice you have been requesting a lot of general medical supplies lately," Dr. Torres said during their monthly check-in. "Are you feeling okay? Any health problems you want to talk about?" Jake forced himself to stay calm. "I have been experimenting with some preventive treatments. You know how the dust and radiation here can affect us long-term. I wanted to try some vitamin supplements and protective medicines." Dr. Torres nodded but looked thoughtful. "That is smart thinking. But if you are having any symptoms, you should come see me officially, and be careful with those supplies. Some of them can be dangerous if used incorrectly." Jake promised to be careful, but he could see that Dr. Torres was suspicious. He would have to be more careful about what he took and how often. That night, as Jake sat with Nova, he realized their secret could not last much longer. Nova was growing rapidly and would soon be too big to hide in his small quarters. Her abilities were getting stronger too. She had started fixing things around the room that Jake had not even known were broken. But the biggest concern was something else entirely. For the past week, the station's long-range sensors had been picking up strange signals from deep space. The signals were faint but clearly artificial. Something was out there, moving toward their system. As Jake watched Nova settle down for sleep, her scales glowing softly in the dim light, he wondered if the approaching signals had anything to do with his small friend. The timing seemed too perfect to be coincidence. Nova looked up at him with her large amber eyes and made a soft sound that somehow conveyed both comfort and warning. Jake had the feeling that their quiet time together was about to end, and that changes were coming that would affect both of their lives forever. The alarm started screaming at 3 a.m. Jake jumped out of bed as red emergency lights flashed through his quarters. Nova huddled against the wall, her scales flashing bright red in fear. Jake had never seen her so scared. He quickly checked the station's communication system. Commander Helen Brooks's voice echoed through the halls. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have multiple unknown ships approaching the system. This is not a drill." Jake's heart pounded as he looked out his window. In the distance, he could see lights in space that had not been there before. Lots of lights. They were arranged in patterns that looked like a massive fleet. Nova made a sound Jake had never heard before, a low musical call that seemed to vibrate through the walls. Her scales were cycling through colors rapidly: silver, gold, blue, purple, red. She was trying to tell him something important. The communication system crackled again. This time it was not Commander Brooks. The voice was strange, speaking in perfect English but with an accent Jake could not place. "People of the mining station, we are the Zephyrian Dominion. We come seeking the return of one who was lost. We know she is among you. Return the Radiant One to us immediately, and no harm will come to your settlement." Jake felt the blood drain from his face. He looked at Nova, who was now glowing so brightly that she lit up the entire room. The Radiant One. They were talking about Nova. "We will give you one of your days to consider," the alien voice continued. "If the Radiant One is not returned by then, we will take her by force. Your cooperation will be remembered. Your resistance will also be remembered." The communication cut off, leaving only the sound of emergency alarms and Jake's rapid breathing. Nova approached him slowly, her scales now showing a pattern he had never seen: deep purple mixed with silver spirals. She touched his hand with her long fingers, and suddenly Jake's mind was flooded with images. He saw Nova's true memories for the first time. She was not just any member of her species. She was their queen. Young but already crowned, she had been on her first diplomatic mission when her ship crashed on this planet. She had been unconscious for weeks, her memories locked away while her body healed. Jake saw the crystal cities from his dreams, but now he understood they were real. Nova ruled over billions of beings across dozens of star systems. The Zephyrian Dominion was one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, and he had been taking care of their queen like she was a lost pet. The telepathic connection grew stronger. Nova showed him more. Her uncle, Prince Veltar, who had opposed her becoming queen so young. The Council of Advisors who had argued she was not ready for a diplomatic mission. the suspicious circumstances of her ship's crash that suggested sabotage. She had awakened fully only a few days ago, but she had chosen not to reveal her true identity to Jake. She knew that if her people found her, she would have to leave him and return to responsibilities she was not sure she was ready for. Jake sat down heavily, overwhelmed by the information flooding his mind. "You are a queen," he whispered. A real queen of an entire civilization. Nova's scales showed deep purple, her color for affection and sadness mixed together. She made soft sounds that Jake somehow understood meant, "Yes, but I am also your friend." The next few hours passed in chaos. Commander Brooks called all station personnel to the main assembly hall. She stood at the front, her face grim as she addressed the 150 humans who lived and worked on the mining station. "We are facing a situation we have never dealt with before," she said. "We have made contact with an alien civilization that appears to be far more advanced than us. They have over 200 ships surrounding our planet. They want someone they call the Radiant One." A miner named Pete raised his hand. "Commander, do we even know what they are talking about? Maybe it is some kind of mistake." Commander Brooks shook her head. "Our scans show their ships use technology we cannot even understand. They could destroy this entire planet if they wanted to. We need to figure out if we actually have what they are looking for." Jake felt Nova shift in the bag he had hidden her in. She was small enough to conceal, but not for much longer. She was growing every day, and the stress of the situation seemed to be accelerating her development. Dr. Torres spoke up from the crowd. "Commander, what if the Radiant One is not a person? What if it is some kind of mineral or artifact? We have been mining here for years. Maybe we accidentally took something that belongs to them." Jake knew he should speak up, but fear kept him silent. What would happen to Nova if he revealed her identity? What would happen to the station? He needed time to think. After the meeting, Jake returned to his quarters with Nova still hidden. She immediately emerged from the bag and looked at him with her large amber eyes. Her scales were cycling through worried patterns. "I do not know what to do," Jake admitted. "If I tell them about you, they will take you away. But if I do not, people might get hurt." Nova touched his face gently with her fingers. The telepathic connection opened again, and Jake felt her thoughts and emotions. She was scared too, but not for herself. She was worried about him and about the innocent people on the station. She did not want anyone to be hurt because of her. She showed him images of what would happen if she did not return to her people. There was political chaos in the Dominion. Her uncle was using her disappearance to claim that she was unfit to rule. If she did not return soon, there could be civil war, but she also showed him what she feared about returning. The restrictions of royal life. The advisors who did not trust her judgment. The pressure to make decisions that affected billions of lives. With Jake, she had been free to just be herself for the first time in her life. A new alarm sounded. Jake looked out his window and saw more ships arriving. These were different from the first fleet, darker and more aggressive looking. Commander Brooks's voice came over the communication system again. "Attention, all personnel. We have a second alien fleet approaching. They appear to be hostile to the first group. We are now caught between two alien forces. All non-essential personnel should shelter in place." Nova's scales flashed bright red, then shifted to angry patterns of orange and black. Through their connection, Jake felt her recognition and fear. The second fleet belonged to her uncle, Prince Veltar. He had come to claim the throne for himself. Nova looked at Jake and then toward the window where the alien ships waited. Her scales settled into a pattern of determined silver and gold. She had made her decision. She began to glow brighter than Jake had ever seen. Her musical voice filled the room, but now it carried power and authority that made the air itself vibrate. She was no longer hiding what she was. Jake realized that his time with the small, vulnerable creature he had rescued was over. The being standing before him now was Queen Zarathel of the Zephyrian Dominion, one of the most powerful individuals in the galaxy. But when she looked at him, her eyes still held the same trust and affection they had shown since the day he found her dying in the canyon. Queen or not, she was still Nova. She was still his friend. The question now was whether their friendship could survive the weight of a crown and the politics of two civilizations that might soon be at war. Nova stood in the center of Jake's quarters, no longer trying to hide her true nature. Her scales blazed with patterns of silver and gold that marked her as royalty among her people. She had grown to the size of a large dog, her wing membranes now strong enough for real flight. When she spoke, Her voice carried harmonics that made Jake's bones vibrate with their power. "Jake Morrison," she said, and hearing his name in her musical voice sent chills down his spine. "I must tell you everything now. My people call me Queen Zarathel, but you gave me a new name when I was lost and broken. You called me Nova, and that name means more to me than any title." Jake sat down slowly, trying to process everything that was happening. Through the window, he could see the two alien fleets facing each other in space above the planet. The mining station was caught in the middle of what looked like an approaching battle. "The second fleet belongs to my uncle, Prince Veltar," Nova continued. "He has always believed that I am too young to rule. When my ship crashed and I disappeared, he told the council that I was dead. He was about to claim the throne when our scouts detected life signs that matched my energy pattern." Nova moved to the window, her scales shifting to worried blues and purples. "He did not come here to rescue me, Jake. He came here to make sure I never return to challenge his claim to power. If he can prove that I have been corrupted by alien influence, the council will declare me unfit to rule." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "Corrupted? You were dying when I found you. I saved your life." "I know," Nova said softly. "And that is exactly what makes this so dangerous. In our culture, a ruler who owes their life to an alien might be seen as compromised. Veltar will argue that I can never make impartial decisions about humanity because of my debt to you." The communication system crackled to life. Prince Veltar's voice was similar to Nova's but colder, filled with authority and threat. "Humans of the mining station, I am Prince Veltar of the Zephyrian Dominion. The pretender who calls herself Queen has been contaminated by your influence. Return her to face judgment or face the consequences of harboring a fugitive." Commander Brooks responded immediately. "This is Commander Brooks of Mining Station 7. We are not involved in your political disputes. If you have business with someone on this station, you will conduct it through proper diplomatic channels." Prince Veltar's laugh was like ice-breaking. "You speak of diplomacy while hiding our rightful ruler. You have 1 hour to surrender her, or we will take her by force. Your primitive weapons cannot protect you from our technology." Jake looked at Nova, who was trembling despite her royal bearing. "What do we do?" he asked. Nova's scales showed determination mixed with fear. "I have to face him, Jake. If I hide here, he will destroy your station and everyone on it. But if I go to him alone, he will have me declared insane and take the throne anyway." Jake stood up, his mind racing. "What if you do not go alone? What if I come with you?" Nova's scales flashed bright red. "No! You do not understand how dangerous this is. Veltar sees humans as insects. If he gets his hands on you, he will kill you just to prove his point about alien contamination. But what if the First Fleet protects us? Your loyal people are out there too, right?" Nova nodded slowly. "Admiral Kethran commands the First Fleet. She was my mother's friend and has served our family for centuries. She wants to bring me home safely, but she cannot act against Veltar without proof that I am still fit to rule." Jake thought about everything Nova had told him through their telepathic connection. The Zephyrian Dominion was vast and ancient, but it was also fragile. Political stability depended on the royal family maintaining the respect of dozens of different worlds and species. "What kind of proof would she need?" Jake asked. Nova's scales shifted to thoughtful blue patterns. "In our culture, a ruler's worth is measured by their ability to forge alliances and bring peace between different peoples. If I could demonstrate that humans and Zephyrians can work together as equals, it would prove that my experience here has made me stronger, not weaker." An idea began forming in Jake's mind. It was dangerous and probably crazy, but it might be their only chance. "What if we propose an alliance? Not just between you and me, but between our whole species?" Nova stared at him. "Jake, your people do not even know my people exist. How could you negotiate for all of humanity?" "I cannot," Jake admitted, "but I can speak for myself. And maybe that will be enough to start something bigger." Before Nova could respond, Commander Brooks's voice came over the station's communication system. "Jake Morrison, report to the command center immediately." "This is urgent." Jake's stomach dropped. Someone had figured out the connection between him and the alien visitors. He looked at Nova, who had gone very still. "They know," she whispered. Jake nodded. "We are out of time. We have to make our choice now." Nova closed her eyes and Jake felt her thoughts through their connection. She was weighing the lives of everyone on the station against her duty to her people. She was thinking about the civil war that might tear apart the Dominion if she failed to handle this correctly. She was also thinking about Jake and how much his friendship meant to her. When she opened her eyes, they blazed with royal authority. "We go together," she said, "but not as prisoner and captor. We go as allies representing our peoples in negotiation. Even though I am just a mining engineer with no authority to negotiate for humanity." Nova's scales shimmered with what Jake had learned was her version of a smile. "You are the human who saved a dying queen and asked for nothing in return. You are the human who has shared dreams and memories with an alien mind. You are the human who chose to protect me even when it put your own life in danger. If you do not have the authority to represent the best of humanity, then no one does." Jake took a deep breath. "Okay, but we do this properly. We go to Commander Brooks first and tell her everything. If we are going to represent our species, we need her backing." Nova nodded. "And we need to contact Admiral Kethran before we deal with Veltar. She needs to understand what we are trying to do." As they prepared to leave Jake's quarters, Nova performed a ritual Jake had seen in their shared dreams. She touched her forehead to his and spoke words in her own language that Jake somehow understood. "Heart friend," she said. "In all our history, this title has never been given to an alien. But you have earned it, Jake Morrison. Whatever happens today, you will always be family to me." Jake felt tears in his eyes. "And you will always be Nova to me. Queen or not, you are my friend." They walked toward the command center together, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of two civilizations. The small dying creature Jake had found in a canyon was about to try to prevent an interstellar war. As they walked, Jake could not help but think that sometimes the universe had a strange sense of humor. He had set out to save one small life, and now he might end up saving millions of them. The question was whether a mining engineer and a young queen could convince two fleets of warships to choose diplomacy over destruction. The command center fell silent when Jake walked in with Nova beside him. Commander Brooks stared at the alien queen, her hand moving instinctively toward her weapon before stopping. Dr. Torres dropped his coffee cup, and the crash echoed through the room. "Commander Brooks," Jake said, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "I would like you to meet Queen Zarathel of the Zephyrian Dominion. You probably know her better as the Radiant One." Nova stepped forward, her scales showing formal patterns of silver and blue. When she spoke, her voice filled the room with harmonic undertones that made everyone present feel the weight of her authority. "Commander Brooks, I apologize for the deception. I have been recovering in Jake Morrison's care since my ship crashed 6 weeks ago. I am ready to return to my people, but not as a prisoner. I propose to go as an ambassador, with Jake Morrison as my counterpart representing humanity." Commander Brooks looked back and forth between Jake and Nova, clearly struggling to process the situation. "Jake, do you understand what you are saying? You want to negotiate with an alien civilization that could destroy us all?" "They do not want to destroy us," Jake replied. "Queen Zarathel came here originally on a peaceful mission. The problem is political. Her uncle wants to use this situation to take her throne and start a war." Dr. Torres found his voice. "Jake, you have been hiding an alien queen in your quarters for 6 weeks? Do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" Nova's scales flashed red briefly. "The only danger, Dr. Torres, was that I would have died without Jake's care. Your friend saved the life of a head of state. In any civilized culture, that would be considered heroic." Admiral Kethran's voice suddenly filled the room as Nova activated a communication device Jake had not seen before. "Your Majesty, we have been searching for you for months. The entire Dominion mourns your loss." "I am not lost, Admiral," Nova replied. "I am exactly where I need to be. But we have a situation. Prince Veltar has arrived and is threatening these humans. I need you to prepare for a formal diplomatic meeting. Your Majesty, Prince Veltar claims you have been corrupted by alien influence. The council is divided about your fitness to rule." Nova's scales blazed with royal anger. "Then we will prove them wrong. Prepare a neutral meeting space aboard your flagship. I will arrive with a human diplomatic representative to demonstrate that our species can work together as equals." Prince Veltar's ship responded with a threatening message. "The Pretender Queen will surrender herself for judgment or face the consequences. The humans harboring her are guilty of interfering in Dominion politics." Commander Brooks stepped forward. "This is beyond my authority. I cannot authorize Jake to represent humanity in an alien negotiation." Jake looked at her steadily. "Commander, with respect, someone has to try. If we do nothing, people are going to die. If Queen Zarathel goes alone, she might be executed by her uncle. If she stays here, he will attack the station. Nova touched Jake's arm gently. There is another way. In Zephyrian law, if two representatives of different species perform the heart-friend bonding ceremony, they become diplomatic equals regardless of their original authority. Jake would have the right to speak for humanity in any negotiation involving our species. Dr. Torres shook his head. That sounds like alien magic. How do we know it is real? Because, Nova said, her scales showing patterns of absolute certainty. Jake and I have already formed a partial bond through our telepathic connection. The ceremony would simply make it official and give it legal weight in Dominion law. Commander Brooks was quiet for a long moment, weighing impossible choices. Finally, she nodded. Jake, if you are willing to do this, you have my backing. But understand, you will be risking your life on the word of someone we met 10 minutes ago. Jake looked at Nova, remembering the small dying creature he had found in the canyon. Remembering the nights spent nursing her back to health. Remembering the dreams they had shared and the bond that had grown between them. She is not someone I met 10 minutes ago, he said quietly. She is Nova, she is my friend, and I trust her with my life. The Heart Friend ceremony was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. Nova placed her hands on his temples while speaking words in the ancient Zephyrian language. Jake felt their telepathic connection deepen and strengthen until he could sense her thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own. More importantly, he could feel her people through her, the weight of responsibility she carried for billions of lives, the loneliness of command, the fear that she was too young and inexperienced to lead such a vast civilization, but also her strength, her wisdom, and her deep love for her people. When the ceremony ended, Jake was no longer just a mining engineer. According to Zephyrian law, he was now a diplomatic representative of humanity with the authority to negotiate treaties and alliances. The meeting aboard Admiral Kethron's flagship was tense from the moment. Jake and Nova materialized in the transport beam. Prince Veltar was waiting with a group of advisors, his scales showing patterns of contempt and anger. So this is the alien that has corrupted our queen, he said, looking at Jake with obvious disgust. A primitive creature from a backwards world. Jake felt Nova's anger through their bond, but he kept his own voice calm and respectful. Prince Veltar, I am Jake Morrison, heart friend to Queen Zarathel and diplomatic representative of humanity. I come seeking peace between our species. Veltar laughed coldly. Peace? Your species is violent and destructive. You pollute your own world and wage war on each other constantly. Why would the Dominion ally itself with such creatures? This was the moment Jake had prepared for. He spoke not just for himself, but for all humanity. Because we are capable of growth, Prince Veltar. Yes, we have made mistakes. Yes, we have been violent and destructive. But we are also capable of great compassion and sacrifice. Jake gestured toward Nova. When I found Queen Zarathel, she was dying and alone. I did not know who she was. I did not know what species she belonged to. I did not know if helping her would bring me reward or punishment. I helped her because it was the right thing to do. Nova stepped forward, her scales blazing with royal authority. Prince Veltar, you claim that my experience with humanity has weakened me. I say it has made me stronger. Jake Morrison represents the best qualities of his species. Compassion, courage, and the willingness to risk everything for others. The Zephyrian council members who had come to observe the meeting whispered among themselves. Jake could see that Nova's words were having an impact, but Veltar was not finished. Pretty words, the prince sneered. But what can humanity offer the Dominion besides sentiment? We are advanced beyond your understanding. We have technology that seems like magic to you. What do you bring to an alliance besides your primitive emotions? Jake smiled, remembering all the small ways Nova had improved his equipment through their weeks together. Prince Veltar, your people have incredible technology, but Queen Zarathel learned something important while she was with us. Sometimes the most advanced solution is not the best solution. Sometimes wisdom comes from seeing problems with fresh eyes. He looked directly at the council members. Humanity may be young and primitive compared to you, but we bring new perspectives, new ideas, and new ways of thinking. Queen Zarathel has experienced this firsthand. She knows that an alliance between our species could benefit both. Nova nodded, her scales showing confidence and determination. I propose a joint colonization project. Humans and Zephyrians working together to terraform new worlds, combining our innovation with your technology. We will prove that cooperation makes both species stronger. The council deliberated for hours while Jake and Nova waited. Through their bond, Jake could feel Nova's nervousness but also her hope. She had risked everything on the belief that their friendship could become a bridge between two civilizations. Finally, the council reached their decision. Admiral Kethran spoke for them. Queen Zarathel, the council recognizes your authority and wisdom. Prince Veltar, you are stripped of rank and exiled for threatening peaceful beings and attempting to usurp the throne. Veltar's scales flashed with rage, but he was outnumbered and defeated. As his supporters abandoned him, he was escorted away under guard. Admiral Kethran turned to Jake. Jake Morrison, heart friend to our queen, the Dominion accepts your proposal for alliance. We will begin with small cooperative projects and build trust between our species. 6 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station, the first joint human-Zephyrian research facility. Through the transparent walls, he watched human and Zephyrian ships working together to build a new colony on the planet below. Nova joined him, now grown to her full majestic size but still showing the same affection in her amber eyes. You carried a sick hatchling in your arms, she said, her scales shimmering with contentment. And in doing so, you carried the future of two worlds. Jake smiled, remembering the small, vulnerable creature he had found in the canyon so long ago. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness have the biggest consequences. Below them, humans and Zephyrians worked side by side, building something neither species could have achieved alone. Jake had set out to save one small life, and ended up helping to create a new age of cooperation between the stars.